Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Archlord Dirk, and today we're jumping into Mortal Shell. Now this game comes out August 11th of this year, so coming out pretty soon. This is the open beta for the game, but I believe that it is a pretty complete package. If you're wondering what Mortal Shell 2 is, it is a sequel to Mortal Shell, obviously, but it's also a Dark Souls-like. Now, thematically speaking, it's very similar to Dark Souls, but if you're a recent Elden Ring player, you're probably going to be thinking that it's more similar to Dark Souls 3 than it is to Elden Ring. So be prepared for some more path-based choices. You're not going to have this big open world or a mount you're running around on. You're going to be looking to go down certain paths and kind of being led along a path in this game. Now, I will say, obviously Dark Souls games are notoriously hard, and I am notoriously very bad at them, as you will see from some of the gameplay in this video. It is interesting because I actually had a good time with this one, and I felt a little bit more, how do I put it, a little more comfortable playing this game than I do playing Dark Souls. I felt like I was actively learning as I went, and a lot of times it felt like, I guess like most people say with Dark Souls, I was learning as I was getting my butt kicked. Now, that's a good thing. So, and right here, right away, as we get into this opening cutscene, you're going to see why I think it is very Dark Souls coded. It is always interesting. There are not a lot of games that play like Dark Souls that aren't Dark Souls coded, almost. In a lot of ways, there's always some kind of like eldritch or like horrific element to it. Obviously, you see this large skeleton bird with a human skull inside of its beak, which is crazy. I do like it. It's actually very, very cool. But yeah, I mean, other than I think off the top of my head of a game like Star Wars Survivor, can't even think of the name of the game right now. Most Dark Souls games are very similar to Dark Souls. Obviously, people joke all the time about, oh, this is the Dark Souls of roguelikes. This is the Dark Souls of whatever. But, you know, I think there can still be a good game in here that doesn't have to just be a Dark Souls-like. Now, we will be jumping around a little bit in this footage just to kind of keep it exciting, but also my initial recording was set weird, so you can't see the whole screen for whatever reason. Sue me, I guess. No, please don't. I don't have any money. But anyway, what I like about Mortal Shell is you're going to see here, the kind of concept is that you are playing as this entity. Again, the story is very vague, but you get to interact with these sort of shells, but they're almost like power armor or Iron Man suits, if you will. And you can switch between them or switch out of them when the need arises, or if you choose to, right? You can see we do a brotherly handshake and I pull the armor onto my skin and it gives me a new shell, which has its own unique powers and properties and weapons, which is really cool. One of the things that I like about this, and probably the reason I'm a little bit better at it than I am at normal Dark Souls games, is that when your shell gets damaged, you don't die. If you think back to a game like Sekiro, where you're fighting, if you die, you can do that, you know, Shadows Die Twice revive situation, which is cool, but, you know, Sekiro's combat was not for everybody. I know that game is notoriously not as loved as other Dark Souls games, but I think this game gives you the benefit of that concept from Sekiro, where you have this sort of like getting killed, if you will, and you have a chance to kind of like save yourself, which gives you a really good opportunity because it's like one extra chance. Now, if you're outside of your shell, you do take significantly more damage. You will find yourself in a much tougher situation if you do not come prepared, I suppose you could say. Now, the game's pretty standard fare. Your starting shell does have a two-handed weapon. It is a pretty fun starting weapon, and perhaps one of the reasons that I'm so bad at Dark Souls is because I never picked the right class, right? What I do kind of find fun about this game is, if you think it's something like Final Fantasy Tactics, where you have that job system and you can switch jobs not on a whim, but you can switch jobs out as it makes sense, and you can give yourself different play styles depending on what you're liking. I like that. You don't have to lock yourself into a class at the very beginning of the game and then decide maybe 2 or 3 hours in, hey, this isn't for me. I don't really like this. I've gotten lucky the first few times. The shell system allows you to change to a shell that you like. And because you can switch out between them, not freely, but you can choose to switch between them or stick with the one you are using, it gives you that freedom of choice that allows you to vary your play style as you need to, kind of giving you a chance to experiment with other gameplay styles. Now here you'll see I'm getting my butt kicked. All right, this is just, there's no way to get around it. I'm not doing well. And you'll see here I got knocked out of my shell. So now I have the shell revive, which is cool. So as you're battling outside of your shell, if you manage to keep yourself alive, you can reinvigorate yourself and pull your shell back to you and get your sort of second life back. I really like that, because right here, normally in a Dark Souls game, I would be dead, right? But now I have my second chance to fight again, and I'm working at it. I'm doing a little bit better because now I'm kind of getting the mechanics under my belt here. I'm understanding what's happening, and I'm able to wrap my mind around how to fight these. Now, I do make a quick adjustment here. I change out my mouse sensitivity. I brought it down a little bit. I'd initially set it a little higher, and then I changed the camera to action instead of the immersive camera that it had. So immersive kind of gets you closer, feels a little more cinematic, makes you feel like you're kind of in a movie. But in a game like this, where you're really needing to focus on hidden enemies and just like making sure you're surviving, I think action camera works better for most people. I think in a boss fight where you don't have to worry about as many mobs or other enemies, immersive could be really fun. Now, one other cool thing is you have a sidearm, which is this gun, and you get 3 shots with this particular firearm, and it gives you, it's pretty strong. It does do a lot of damage, and as you use up the 3 shells, you see, you are able to battle, and as you land more hits, you rebuild your ammo counter, which I think is a good system, right? Keeps you engaged in the combat, allowing you to mix up things, and, it also makes sure that you're not utilizing the sidearm as a crutch, because obviously giving that range with a 2-armed weapon is a nice mix. Now you'll see blocking and perfect guards, those are for people who know how to play games. I do not. So here I am just getting after it. Now you see I've revived my shell there, and I was able to kind of get my bearings a little bit, and it was helpful that I got my shell back kind of early on there. Now, as you continue to die, which is, par for the course, you will get longer and longer cooldown times for your shell. The more times you die, the longer it takes for your shell to regenerate. Now here you'll see I've arrived at what is called a beacon. Now beacons serve as like bonfires or what have you in any other Dark Souls game. Beacons are kind of cool because once you activate them, you do get, saved. You regenerate your resolve, HP comes back, your healing flasks come back. One unique thing though is you can actually enter inside of the beacons and cleanse them. You'll see here I'm going to jump into this beacon and cleanse it. Now initially I was thinking cleansing the beacon would be something similar to like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where you have those shrines and you're doing like a little puzzle. It doesn't really seem to be the case here. You're not solving any puzzles really, but you do get some cool items usually when you cleanse these beacons. There's some enemies in there. They're not particularly hard, no more so than any other enemy at the area that you're at least, right? Obviously, as you progress, the beacons will become more difficult. I assume they also become longer. This is only after a few hours of gameplay, so, and of course, I spent a lot of that time, backtracking, so it can only be, I can only say what I can say about it, but I think that it makes logical sense that those beacons would take a little bit longer to cleanse as you progress through the game. Obviously, the enemies inside them will be more difficult. But I like the concept. It's kind of it's a fun thing, you know, giving you chances to go through these sort of temple-esque dungeons, right? And find, you know, some cool loot, and it makes you feel good as you go through them. It's a nice little addition, I think, to the game. I don't think it slows you down at all. It just adds a little bit of extra, you know, uniqueness to the game. Now you'll see as I fight this giant, I'm again, not a blocker. I'm very much a roll in and jab and roll out kind of player, just trying to avoid getting hit at all, right? I don't have the timing skills necessary to perfect block or what have you. At least not yet. Maybe if I played more of these types of games and I really got into them, I would get those skills down. I will say, again, with Mortal Shell, I think it's a little more beginner friendly. The get good phrase is still definitely relevant here, but it is nice to see that little bit of leniency, I guess you could say, or leeway, where if you do get knocked out, you know, you get killed, but you actually initially just get knocked out of your shell and you have sort of that second chance to survive. Here I get to the end of the beacon and I'm cleansing it. Again, you just kind of have to hold down and it cleanses it and goes pretty quickly. Again, it's extra experience. It's easy kind of thing to do. And I'm sure there's a benefit for doing the beacon cleansings as you get further down into the game. Now here's where we start getting more into the meat and the potatoes of the game. You're going through on an adventure, if you will, and just cutting down bad guys. You know, it's very much the Dark Souls gameplay you are probably looking for and loving. Again, I think if you loved Elden Ring, there may be some, especially if you loved Elden Ring and you didn't really like Dark Souls games, I think this game is going to be maybe a little bit more challenging for you to get back in, you know, to get into. Obviously, Elden Ring does play similarly, but there is so much like freedom and openness to the game, especially even in the beginning sections of Elden Ring, that I think this game, because of the sort of more linear nature of it, it may put you off a little bit. Obviously, here there was two paths I could have taken. In this instance, I took the top path, but at the end, you come to this sort of like pond, I guess you could call it, and you do end up jumping down and you can backtrack through the lower section as well, if you so choose, right? Especially if you're, you know, a real gamer. Unlike myself, obviously. You would go back through and get those extra kills for the gloom, is what it's called in this game. It's not souls. In this one, it is gloom. Now, one thing that the shells have that I do find to be particularly cool is they have shell abilities. So when you're inside your shell, you hit the F key and it will activate a shell specific ability. Now, the shell that I'm using is Heros, and his special, I apologize, it's a suit of armor. This armor's special ability is petrification. So it stones enemies in a small radius. You might have noticed it activating in that opening cutscene where all of those cultists were around and they all turned to stone. It activates here, and it's pretty cool because it allows you to do extra damage. The enemies can't move, and of course, you're able to then, once they break out of the petrification, you're able to do a execution style move on them, which is great. It really does help give you a little extra. Again, you'll see I'm playing like a real noob, and that's okay. I think one of the coolest parts of this game, and maybe for a Dark Souls purist that will upset you, I think this game's a little more beginner friendly. Again, that the shell system really does feel unique in that, one, you can get knocked out of the armor and then you have a chance to still fight and not immediately die. It gives you that second chance like we talked about in Sekiro. And of course, you also have the fact that you can change up your play style at any time. Well, you know, not at any time, but as you collect more shells or you gain access to different shells, you can change your playstyle if you want to. Again, you don't have to, but it allows you to have the option to do it. You don't have to lock yourself into a particular playstyle right then and there. Again, I think this is a very new player friendly thing. It gives you an opportunity to try out different playstyles and find one that you really love, or maybe find one or two that you really like. And then it gives you this whole new layer of tactics that you can utilize in boss fights, which I think is really cool. You know, obviously when you go into a boss fight, sometimes you're going to be in a boss fight and you're going to just know it's going to be rough for the character you have, depending on what kind of boss it is. Certain bosses will be defeatable by certain archetypes more easily. Now with a game like Mortal Shell, if you're having a lot of trouble with a particular boss, you do have the option to switch it up, which I think is really nice. I think it's going to help both new players and old players, even if you are a Dark Souls, expert or a Dark Souls legacy player maybe, get frustrated sometimes. Sometimes you start losing so much that it stops being fun. And I think the shell system gives you a brief opportunity to be like, you know what? I'm not having fun anymore. But what if I change up my shell? What if I switch up completely and do something a little bit different and give myself an opportunity to move in a different way? You'll see I died there. I had a lot of trouble here on this bridge with this particular knight. He has a spear, and apparently, not only are spears super deadly in real life war, they're super deadly in Mortal Shell as well. So I make the backtrack again to the bridge, as you might have guessed. And what you're going to notice is that just like in any Dark Souls game, when it finally clicks for you, and you manage to beat an enemy that you're having a particularly tough time with, regardless if it's a boss or, heaven forbid, just a general enemy, or even just a beefier general enemy like I had on this bridge, when you do finally conquer it, it still feels incredibly good. And I think regardless of what skill level you're playing at, I think that's great. I think it feels good to overcome these difficulties, and I think that's something we can all bond on. Even if you're not a particularly good gamer, when you overcome your own personal difficulty in a game like this, it feels just as good as somebody who is really good and, beats, Melania shirtless, pantsless, with a singular arm, and is soloing them in one go, right? I think we can all bond over these challenges that we are able to overcome. It's good to see more games leaning into this single player experience when there's so many AAA titles out there that are just like loot boxes and always online and things of that nature. It can be exhausting. So when you get a game like Mortal Shell that is challenging and it requires you as a player to just work hard and overcome it, it's really satisfying in a way that is hard to describe if you've never tried it. So here's what I'm going to say. If you loved Dark Souls or Demon Souls, I think you're really going to love Mortal Shell. I think you should give it a shot. If you loved Elden Ring, don't immediately turn away from this game. I think there is still opportunity here for you to love this game too. And if you've never tried a Dark Souls game, or you've always stayed away from them because of the way the community can be and how difficult the game is supposed to be, give Mortal Shell a try. I think the extra protection you have from being knocked out of your shell before you die is generally pretty new player friendly. I think the fact that you can change up your play style with the different shells is really cool until you find one that you love. Or maybe you find one or two that you love and you switch between them when it makes sense. It gives you that extra layer of tactical nature. I also love the Resolve ammo system. The idea that you can be, primarily focused on being a two-handed sword wielder while also having that shotgun in your back pocket for something you really need it to have, you know, when you need it really to be there for you, is great. I don't think the game should be dismissed because it might be a little bit more new player friendly. So this is my final opinions on Mortal Shell 2. I think it's a lot of fun. I actually had more fun playing Mortal Shell than I have playing any of the other Dark Souls games. With the exception of maybe Sekiro. I do like Sekiro. I am really bad at Sekiro though. Like worse than I am at this game. And you might have noticed at the 800 times speed as I kind of made my way through it, that I'm not particularly good at this game either. But again, this I think is a really good starting point if you've always wanted to get into Dark Souls likes and you've always been just afraid of the get good crowd. Give Mortal Shell a try. I think there are enough options here that it feels like you can have some real tactical nature, and it feels like you have a little bit of extra support that you maybe don't get in other Souls likes. Well, what else can I say about Mortal Shell 2? Nothing. Go play the game. There's a demo right now. Buy it in 5 days when it comes out, if you've played the demo and you enjoyed it. That's all I've got for you. I've been Archlord Dirk. Please remember to like and subscribe and, you know, let me keep doing this thing, I guess. Or maybe I'll just keep doing it anyway. I'm having a lot of fun. Thanks.